Reports continue to pile in that Hamas has attacked Israel and that Israel has retaliated. In today's video, we're going to look at what has happened right here. I'm going to explain to you who Hamas is, how they were founded, and start to dig into how we can see the reverberations of war from previous experiences and making it very clear that what we see in the news has always been there to obscure what's more important: who stands to gain. I can tell you who has lost, and that is the innocent civilians that are continuously losing their lives in this war and so many others. So today we're going to take a deeper look at the circumstances right here and now. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Of course, you've been seeing this. I'm not going to go into every detail because by the time you watch this video, there's already going to be, new information coming out. There's a war that has been going on for a long time, and it's just back and forth, back and forth. All the places that Hamas hides in, operates from, we will turn them into ruins. Get out of there now, he told Gaza residents. This is Netanyahu, who have no way to leave the tiny overcrowded Mediterranean territory of 2.3 people. So there is going to be an intensification of the retaliation. That has been very clear. Over 5,000 rockets fired as Operation Al-Aqsa Flood begins. Hamas armed wing. I have seen that this has been anywhere between 2,000 and 5,000. Ultimately, it's been a lot. And you can see that Hamas has basically said, we're going to keep doing it. And then Israel has basically said, all right, well, we're going to continue to fight back. It's not just a war that sprang up today. It's been going on a long time. But how did this all begin? And how did this really come to be? Because you're seeing it here in the news, and it has been sort of a new event. But many things have occurred over the years. You could look at what Netanyahu had to say.
ולהשיב מלחמה שערה בעוצמה ובהיקף שהאויב לא הכיר. האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע כמותו.
You could look at the different countries around that have come out to support Israel. All Western nations at this time have said, we do not condone what has happened here, and we want to make sure that we stand by Israel. That has been pretty much across the board. Some countries, however, have not said that. And I want to show you the BRICS involvement in all of this. I think it's important that we start to see how the new world order is coming to be. Here we have a video which basically just shows the Palestine Tower collapsing in Gaza after Israel airstrike, which sadly has cost innocent lives. There's been a failure, an intelligence failure. Israel's high-tech spies and $1 billion Iron Dome defenses failed to stop Hamas massacring civilians in an embarrassing failure. Interesting, right? They have this technology called the Iron Dome. Essentially, you've got this shield that they've had where if any missiles come on in, this thing would detect them and it'd be able to blow them out of the sky. And why wasn't that actually operating and 5,000 different missiles were able to get in, or at least some of them? And so that's starting to make people ask some questions. Hamas' surprise attack is a historic failure for Israeli intelligence services. You have Israel's former Mossad chief. We didn't have an inkling of what was going on. They didn't know that they even had that many missiles at all. So now they start to ask some questions. A day after the 50th anniversary of the start of the 1973 Yom Kippur War, when Israeli forces were caught off guard by Syrian and Egyptian tank columns, the military appeared once again to have been surprised by a sudden attack. Quote, it looks similar to what happened at that time. As we can see it, Israel was completely surprised by a very well coordinated attack. It's been going on a long time. The media has made it seem as if this just began today or yesterday by the time you see this video, but there's much more to it than that. How Israel went from helping create Hamas to bombing it. Wait a second. What did I just say? I want to talk about this right now. I have quotes right here that you absolutely must hear. They're going to shock you. And I want to make this clear as well. There's always going to be more than just, black and white, 100%. But I want to show you the quotes. I want to give this to you from various sources, even inside of Israel itself. Hamas origins begin in Israel. The reason why this happened was to counteract Yasser Arafat. Arafat, quote, Hamas is a creature of Israel. The guy himself said that. Yitzhak Rabin, former prime minister, he referred to the creation of Hamas as a, quote, fatal error. Then we have Yitzhak Segev. He's a former general. Not a quote, but the paraphrase. Funding given by Israeli government helped nourish the seeds of Hamas. And then we have Avner Cohen saying, quote, Hamas, to my great regret, is Israel's creation. All of these direct quotes, sources in the description. And I think it's important that we understand this. But even with that knowledge, it's important, yes, to understand the details of what's happening right now. Yes, there is a war. We look back at how that was created in the first place. Like, how did this even come to be? And we start to see the origins of it. And we start to ask, why in the world would this happen? This can't be. And yet it does, not just in Israel, but you look at this all around the world and see this keeps happening. And so where my mind goes is always to the same question. Qui bono? Who benefits? Who stands to gain? And we'll talk about that in a second here. I want to show you something. U.S. arms left in Afghanistan have been smuggled into the Palestinian factions in the Gaza Strip. The local Palestinian news agency disclosed that Newsweek reported an unarmed senior Israeli military official confirming some of the small weapons seized in Afghanistan have been spotted in the hands of the Palestinian factions in the Gaza Strip. They're talking about this. They're saying it. Weapons are difficult to control, and we see that all the time. They're getting into the hands of people that they shouldn't be. We saw very similar things with ISIS, with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, and so on. These things have happened before, because when you pump out all of these things, when you use military contractors, when you start to do things and kind of take your hands off it and say, okay, we're going to let that happen like this, it always creates a problem. You don't have that control and oversight. What happened with the case of Afghanistan and Iraq? We're starting to see similar things. With Afghanistan specifically, what later became Al-Qaeda at a later time started as the Mujahideen, the rebel fighters. And that was in 1979, created by the United States. And this was done to counteract the Soviets at the time. Let's fund this group so that we don't have to touch it, and they will be able to fight off the Soviets. And this happened with Afghanistan. And then, of course, from there, it started to evolve. And it sounds similar in this way, there's much more to it, to what we've seen here with Hamas and Israel. Now, I am not getting into the depths of all of that. There's so much more, very clearly. But I think it's important to understand the most important element of this, and that is who stands to gain. Have you figured it out yet? Do you want to take a guess? All right. Well, I want to show you something related to the BRICS. Number one, we've seen the expansion. You've noted it. Over time, the New World Order has been unraveling, or the old world order has been unraveling into the New World Order, and you see it for yourself with the inclusion now of countries like, number one, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, other countries in this area, okay? Saudi Arabia is the one. Look at this. Saudi Arabia blames Israel for unprecedented Hamas terror attacks. So they came out and they said, you kept poking the bear and the bear attacked. You kept provoking it and it came back to you. Interesting that the timing of this just recently was with Saudi Arabia trying to get better relations with Israel. There was so, like, every single thing was coming up in such a great, it was positive news. The Middle East is becoming more peaceful today than it was just a few years ago. With that, with the BRICS, the reason I mention this is that we have what I believe was a treaty with China sitting in the middle of Iran and Saudi Arabia. A lot of people talk about Iran's involvement in all of this. But if you understand something, Iran is predominantly Shia Muslims. But Saudi Arabia is Sunni. These are two very different. It's not like, yeah, well, kind of a little different. No, they don't like each other. What's happening now? They've basically said, okay, we're going to stop because the war in Yemen was essentially between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And just using that as what they call the theater of war. But what we can see now is something very distinct. What I note here is big changes that have happened. And it's unfortunate. So that's one part of it. We have to understand and look for the next aspect of it. When we look at the factors of who benefits, if you could see right here, this chart, it's a company known as Raytheon. And just recently, their stock had been performing very badly. Why is Raytheon significant? Well, this one company is responsible in part for the creation of the Iron Dome. And that's just one. But in general, the military-industrial complex stands to gain. This is just one company that is likely to probably gain even more. You know how they work, the biggest establishments, whether it's Lockheed and Martin, whether it's Raytheon or some other, these are the companies that will benefit. The average person will lose as a result. War doesn't benefit the people under any circumstance. And that is an absolute matter of fact. There's always a blowback effect. If you go in and attack a country, you can be certain that they're not going to like you very much after that. And we're seeing this over and over in all these places. Look how many areas the United States has attacked for one. Well, that kind of makes them upset when you do so, right? Of course, there could be reasons. Well, these are the details I wanted to get to today. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. It is very triggering to some that have basically just not wanted to listen to all of the details. And I think it's important that we do. What does this mean overall? For some people, they just can't grasp it. And they will simply just be on a bandwagon and they will just listen to whoever their guy is and simply go with what makes them feel good, what makes them feel right. But I'm usually one to feel that it's okay to be uncomfortable with knowing some information and then making the judgments for myself. And that's what I hope that I brought to you today. Some interesting information. Do with it what you may. I didn't want to bring you just, here's a bunch of stuff blowing up in the video. I think there's a lot more going on here. And most importantly, who stands to gain? Who else do you think stands to gain from this? Any other companies? Any other people? I would really like to know your thoughts. If you found the video informative, hit that thumbs up. If you hated it, get that thumbs down. Make your voice heard. And of course, in the comments below, put your facts. Put your facts in that comment section so that we can have this discussion and understand the details. All right? So that's all break it down. I want to see you here tomorrow on the next one. Take care.